Bienvenue tout le monde. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and being part of this closing plenary, the international edition. We are going to be sharing a spotlight on territorial cooperation. And I appreciate your time. I know this is going to be an interesting conversation. My name is Kate McKenzie, and I'm your moderator for the international portion of today's conversation. I'm joining you from Canada, where I live on the traditional lands of the Blackfoot Indigenous people in the city of Calgary. It is very cold there right now, so I am so glad to be here in France. Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you to everyone who was able to join us for the Secret Marathon film screening that we just had. I am so excited to have had the French premiere of the film here today, so thank you to everyone that joined us. I am also the director of the Secret 3K Run Walk, which is an international run walk series held on International Women's Day and now hosted in 27 countries, including France, to help create safe and inclusive spaces for everyone. I'm joined today by two leaders who are responsible for promoting responsible economies through collaborative initiatives, Pedro Tarak and Leonardo Maldonado, who I would also like to consider as friends. It has been such a pleasure to get to know you both.
Absolutely.
So let me tell you a little bit more about these two wonderful humans. Joining us from Buenos Aires and Patagonia, Pedro Tarak is the co-founder of Sistema B, a movement dedicated to advancing B corporations and favorable ecosystems for economic transition across Latin America. Pedro is also co-founder of RITA, the Regional Impact Trade Alliance, incorporated in Melbourne. He's the co-founder of Impact Trade in Santiago and an investor in several other impact companies, such as Guaki, a regenerative organic yerba mate energy drink sold primarily in the US and Canada. He is the trustee of Wellbeing Economy Alliance and a counselor of the World Future Council. Joining us from Chile, Leonardo Maldonado is the CEO of Gulliver, a private innovation agency, and the co-founder of Cities Can Be, a global movement bringing governments, business, and citizens together to advance the UN Sustainable Development Goals at the city level. Leonardo has spent over 2 decades pioneering innovation ecosystems and championing extreme collaboration across Latin America and Europe, transforming the culture of innovation in 28 cities worldwide. He is the author of 5 books available for free under Creative Commons. Welcome. Please join me in welcoming the two of them. So Pedro and Leonardo, we have heard and seen so much during this conference. I'm wondering what kind of big ideas have stood out to you? Are there any actionable steps that you would say, or counter-tempo, contre-temps strategies that you see that territories could take to catalyze cooperation? Tell me about, what are you seeing?
Well, one of the things I found fascinating was the idea that we needed adaptable hope. Because we're always wondering about skills. We're always wondering about practices, processes, and things like that, you know, very serious things. But if there's no hope about the future, it doesn't really make any sense to adapt. So, adaptable hope before anything else really rung a bell with me. I thought that was very central and always forgotten.
I really appreciate what you're saying, because I think if we're going to create change, we have to keep getting that hope coming back to us. I mean, for me, that happens through stories, through film. I see and I hear stories like the ones that you shared this morning with us. I think anyone who was here for Leonardo's talk this morning, we felt emotional, and that gives us that extra boost to keep going, right? Because This work of social and environmental change. It's not a sprint; it's a marathon. Having run a marathon, let me tell you, it takes a little bit. So you have to keep the energy, right? How about for you, Pedro?
Well, to be quite frank, I'm still very moved because I just saw the film. And you know, when you're moved, it takes a while for the brain and the rational part to come back. But what I'm taking from this experience, Free to Run, is much more than just running to overcome or running to go beyond rights. It's running to be. And someone yesterday spoke about the importance of freedom, liberty. And not only freedom and liberty for individuals, but for people, for communities, for regions. You also, you know, featured or made us think about Dunkirk and what that, you know, reminds us all throughout the world. You know, the search and the fight for freedom. And freedom is probably the most crucial element to bring the secret fire that any of us have, which is also the basis to become a business. It's also the basis to actually develop good markets for the world based on our identities. Of course, I also, you know, was very impressed by the level of hospitality, of care, of cuisine, of smiles that you get in this region in particular. Sorry. Just saying it because...
It touches the heart, right? You know, when you experience that welcome, I agree. It's always such a pleasure to be in France and have so many people just say bonjour, ça va? So many people to check and, you know, make sure that you're doing well, and to ensure that you enjoyed your food, which I appreciate. So I agree with you. It's wonderful. I'm taking away so many lessons from both of you. You know, from your talks and our conversations, Leonardo, I am taking this beautiful idea of extreme collaboration. And your story of the Dunkirk spirit really stood out to me this morning. How do we say, how can I help? How can I get involved? This isn't their problem, it's something I can do as well. I think that's such a beautiful idea. And, you know, I'm thinking, Pedro, of the ideas that you're bringing forward also around collaboration and saying, how do we work together? I'm really taking this idea of the importance of that we don't need to agree, but we do need to commit to coming together and asking questions. I love that idea. I think, so I'm really taking both of those home with me to Canada. I'm excited to have you shared them. What are some of the challenges you're seeing in scaling up territorial cooperation? And are you seeing these challenges as being universal, or are they more region-specific? Both of you, I would love to hear your answers.
Well, one of the challenges that I mentioned in my talk was the algorithm. The algorithm is polarizing us. It's so committed to engage us. It's so committed to us getting addicted to the content that it figured out that indignation is the right emotion for us to get addicted. And it's promoting indignation every second of every day, and we're buying it. So for collaboration, that is poison, and that's a sickness we're having around the world. On the other hand, you have this idea of power and the future being like a pie, and so if I get more of it, you get less of it, that conversation tends to infest every region everywhere in the world. And we keep fighting to see who gets the bigger part of the pie, which makes no sense. The future is not there. The future is to be created, especially in an exponential era. What we could create, it's exponential. Now, if we work together, the amount of future we can create is unlimited. So we shouldn't be struggling with this sense of scarcity, but we are. And the whole idea of, on one hand, recognizing the local belonging, the local us, the local way of us being together, and at the same time building global networks of those localities, can actually not only provide the change we need to be sustainable, but also provide abundance in resources. We can actually solve the problems of scarcity one city at a time if we stop thinking in 20th century's mindset and we start thinking in 21st century mindset.
I love that, just moving towards abundance mentality, away from the scarcity mentality, which also sounds like we all get to have more pie. And as a fan of pie, I think that's great. How about for you, Pedro?
Well, yes, just following what you're saying, I do see some conjunctural challenges that has to do with fear. Fear from the other, fear from the other country. So we build walls. And we start building walls, especially commercially. We don't want, because we fear, you see, we don't want their products or their services or their possibility to come in me when we're interdependent, right? And and that I'm listening a lot from populism. And I come from a country that has had left-wing populists and right-wing populists. So it goes beyond ideologies. It has to do with, I want to be better and I want to exclude you. It has nothing to do with a value proposition. But I see a huge opportunity in that context for the regions, for the territories. Because once you go one level down from nation states, you go to the territories that are proud of their identities, that have a lot to offer for the rest. Then we meet thousands and thousands and thousands of cities, of provinces, of autonomous communities, of regioni, of lända, of provinces, you just name it. And we can do two things at the same time. We can create, and we are already doing that, we can create the favorable ecosystems for a different way of trust building between ourselves. And once you start thinking territories, regions, this is a new role of regions in a context where, unfortunately, we're listening voices of war. So who's going to be building the trust? Who's going to go beyond the borders or the horizons of exclusion, of mutual exclusion, of massive violence? The regions. And region to region can build trust. And that's why we're promoting, on the one hand, the kind of regions that we call impact regions or impact markets, driven by solutions for the world, because we need to accelerate the kind of solutions that massively we need, like climate, biodiversity regeneration, lowering down inequality, and at the same time we need to build a new competitive edge for those regions and for its own companies and investments. So it's, you know, it's both things. And that's why we started RITA, Regional Impact Trade Lines, to facilitate organizational infrastructure and a relational infrastructure for regions that want to relate commercially, economically between themselves.
I really appreciate what you're saying here because, we started off, we're at the challenge of fear, right? I remember seeing a mural many years ago that was in a city that said, replace fear with curiosity. And I hear you saying that we need to be curious about these other regions. We need to be curious and start moving beyond the scarcity idea of the 127 countries towards, okay, we actually have hundreds of these different smaller territories, regions, municipalities that can provide a solution for us. So if we're moving into that solution space, both of you have worked with organizations that emphasize collaboration, and sometimes that collaboration requires letting go of what might be a controlled or expected end result. I wonder, how are you encouraging leaders to embrace this, counter-tempo or contre-temps approach? Is there things that you're doing to help, especially in a world that often prioritizes the predictability of results?
Well, I think one of the most wonderful things that the 21st century brought is we need to face the fact that control was always an illusion. Control was the major driver for the 20th century. It was never true. The idea that we could understand the future before it happened was just an illusion, a nice one, but it doesn't work. And one of the reasons why all of us that were trained on how to live in the 20th century are having a hard time with the 21st one is we would love to have control.
Wouldn't we all?
Yeah, but it's not necessary. Actually, assuming that we never had control, well, anybody who has already a teenage daughter knows that you don't have control. You only have the illusion of control.
I will say my 2-year-old son also.
So what we do have is the capacity to create. And what we do have is the capacity to invent our way out. And if we put that at the center of the conversation, and we assume that we are in a century of innovation, that the idea that wins the one who's more efficient, it's gone with the dodo bird. Efficiency doesn't add you anything today. Of course you need to be efficient, but it's irrelevant. Are you able of running at the speed that the market is running? That requires innovation, that requires failing fast, that requires having 1,000 experiments at the same time. That does not require absolute control over reality. It never worked, but the fantastic thing about the 21st century is we are willing, for the first time in the history of humanity, to accept complexity, to accept that we can see 20% of the variables, that we live, our companies live in ecosystems, and we can be in charge of our company, but we cannot be in charge of the ecosystem.
I wonder if you could just elaborate on a little bit more, Leonardo, this idea, what's the difference between the building of systems like we have with efficiency versus building an ecosystem? How do you encourage a leader to embrace that mindset?
So we used to fight for a piece of the market with our products. It doesn't really work that way anymore. We're actually fighting for what market is going to exist. So if you're thinking of regeneration, for example, you need to rethink the whole process. And you might say, no, but it's not competitive with normal fruits and vegetables. Yeah, but it's a different market. It's a different world. So maybe you're not going to sell it to your neighbor, but you're going to sell it to a different country for twice the price. We need to understand that today's solution is going to be obsolete in the next. And so what we need to play in the next court is a minimum viable ecosystem. Because I need my product to live in an ecosystem of other products that make it possible, that make it suitable, that it makes sense. So maybe my best ally as a regenerative apple grower might be a circular running shoe company, because we're going after the same kind of clients, we're going into the same logic, we're going into the same bet on the future. What we need to understand is, if the future is so, it's moving so fast, what we're doing right now is each of us is betting on one kind of future possible. And we're doing this globally. So if you have a regeneration agriculture in France, and he sees a regeneration agriculture in Japan, they're going to have more in common, and they're going to have more space of alliance, because they're trying to build a market, not for a place in the market, but for a whole market in itself.
Absolutely, right? We're moving out of that operating in isolation towards thinking more collaboratively. I mean, Pedro, I see you nodding along. Like, I would love to, how are you encouraging leaders to embrace this approach?
Let me just follow what Leonardo was just saying. Where do we build complicity? It's in the purpose, and a purpose that is shared as a common interest and good for all parties. This morning, I was listening to Sébastien Copp, and of course, you know, his product is a shoe, is a sneaker, right? But it happens to be that I'm an investor in the same purpose, and we have exactly the same mindset in helping nature to return back, its regeneration. And he's French, I'm an Argentine, and Guayaquil, which is it's an energy drink based on mate, has exactly the same business model. So it's not the same industry, but we have exactly the same purpose. And it's in the purpose. This morning I was reading the messages of regeneration here in Hauts-de-France, and they have created this association for agricultural regeneration here in Hauts-de-France, right? You know, saying, these are the same guys. I mean, we're the same people, you see? And because we have the same cause. And we both come from the B world, the B Corp world, right? And this happens because we belong to a kind of business identity that our core business has to do with solutions. And that's where we build our competitive edge. And it's through solutions that we actually come up with products and services throughout the world, which we build a global community. Now, going back to the region, what really made me very happy is that the regenerative agriculture sector is building a sector. And that's what's happening in Mendoza. In Mendoza, which is the land of Malbec that competes with the wines of France, but lots of French investments, by the way. That's a place where Wines of Argentina has gone through exactly the same self-assessment of the B Corps, but all the companies, so the same challenging questions. And that has helped Mendoza to have the highest per capita B Corps of Argentina. But that has also, thanks to Mendoza Can Be, Thank you, Leonardo. This guy and another guy from Rio de Janeiro have actually triggered a process in that province that has made Mendoza an innovative economic region. And they're developing basically the competitive edge, which has been imitated by Uruguay because they created the spaces for multi-stakeholder co-creation of the next economy, of the next competitive edge of their market. And Uruguay has inspired Monterrey and Nueva León in Mexico. And in turn, all this inspired people in Melbourne, Australia. And together, it inspired people in Umbria and in Tuscany, in Italy. And today you have spaces in Italy and in Umbria and Tuscany to co-create together with all the chambers of commerce and industry of two regions in the valley of Valtiberina, the northern part of the upper valley of the Tiber. Now, this is very contagious. And why is it contagious? Because it's the interest of trade between the regions that accelerates not only the logic of how to do things, how to co-create, but it's the need of a new logic of competitiveness for the world. So one thing I'm taking home is at least one next dream. May I say it? May I?
Yes.
The best Lille for the world. And not only the best Lille in the world.
Agreed. And I hear what you're saying. We can align on this sense of purpose. We're finding that ripple effect. You're telling us about the ripple effect it's having, with cities can be, with Rita, and how that shared purpose is allowing people to create new trade opportunities. We've built a lot of momentum here. We've had so many good conversations with so many different individuals. I wonder what next steps, as we kind of close off our conversation, are there any specific collaborations or commitments that you feel could serve as immediate next steps? Anything that you want to recommend that we take to keep the momentum that we've built here, to keep it going?
Well, I've been very amazed with what I've seen as a conversation in Lille. There's a lot of multi-stakeholder spaces that have been kept ongoing for quite a while, that have produced spaces like this one that has, I don't know, how many, 18 years? Something like that?
18 years, yes.
So I'm very impressed with that. The next step for me is how many people are involved, how many people could be involved. So we have 10 companies, we could have 20. We have 3 NGOs, we could have 50. Well, how many more people can we engage in understanding that the future of Lille is ours? It belongs to everybody who's... We need to stop having people that use the city. We need to have people who own the city. When you use your hotel room, you take the towel and you leave it there and it solves itself. When it's your home, you know that if you leave the towel there, it will be there the next day. When it is your home, you take care of it in a different way. How many tourists do we have in the city, companies, universities, and how many homeowners? We need to become owners of our city. That is the next step.
Thank you so much for sharing that idea of that ownership that we need to take. And I would add to this idea of not just how many people we can have, but looking around and saying who's missing from the conversation also. In Canada, we're having a big discussion of how do we involve and invite our Indigenous people into the conversation. And so we have to look around and say, who is also not here? Who is not represented that needs to be part of the conversation too? Because they also have ownership Pedro, what's the next steps that you see?
Well, again, I'm not from here, and with all respect, as you allowed me to have my own dreams, I already feel that I have that permission. I have millions of next steps for Lille. I would love to have a representation of Hauts-de-France with this logic of collective multi-sectorial co-creation in different, at least one per continent. Because I think that's where we're going. We need not only the peace builders, but the regional players that provide the rest of the world with transformative conversations. There are already some lenders, as you might know, that have their own representations in different continents. So just imagine having, of course, helping the French embassy, but having your own representation in some continents. Also, I would love to arrive here in Lille to the train station and have the tourist office with a booth specially for learning about all the different purpose-driven shops, hotels, restaurants, shopping centers, you know, where are the, and go have a road, you know, have a pathway, a concrete place where to say, these are the places you might want to go. And because the world needs these places. We all need purpose, everybody, because that's who we are. That's the way we built the legacy. Rome, by the way, has decided to promote in all 130 companies of the city the elevation of their purpose as Società B, as they call it. And that's the equivalent, more or less the equivalent of entreprise à mission. So just imagine all the companies in Hauts-de-France or Lille, you know, elevating the purpose and measuring, you know, in a holistic way, the value that they create for the region, but also for the world.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Leonardo. And thank you to all of you. Thank you for hosting us and allowing us international visitors to share ideas with you. We greatly appreciate being here and being so warmly welcomed. I would like to invite my French colleagues to share their thoughts. Please come to the stage, Thierry Cardinal.
Merci.
Thank you very much.
Bonsoir. Est-ce qu'on peut applaudir plus fort, s'il vous plaît, Kate, Leonardo?
Could we have a round of applause for Kate, Leonardo, and Pedro? Thank you for the love you give to our country and the ambition you have for our country. Can you continue to applaud a little bit more for people who are building up a new world and who will come to conclude this forum session and to conclude, and for the 30 last minute of this last forum, I would like to invite people who have experiments. Sandrine Delerue, Vice President of the Alliance Network, Alexandre Lafaye, Sinopia CEO, and no need to introduce Marilène Foubet, chairwoman of the Alliance Network. Now, we will talk about experience now to conclude this World Forum based on the experience, making a difference for a more responsible an economy. And we're going to start with the founder of Sinopia, independent think tank working on the issue of governance. I mean, we're not going to pretend we don't know one another, so we do know each other very well. So Marianne agrees that we're going to use first name terms. Alexandre. Sinopia, Alexandre, Alliance Network, you work on the territories barometer. I would like us to talk about it, but before you tell us why this barometer, in which context can we imagine having a barometer for territories? Jean-Pierre Le Tartanay are the guilty parties there when we had a discussion on something to do with the transformation of our territories, and we thought, could we measure in a relevant and accurate way the way things change at the level of a territory? There are lots of data available everywhere.
Très content, mais dans la réalité, c'est l'arbre qui cache la forêt.
When we've got 7% redundancy, that's okay, but I mean, it changes from the area you focusing on. I mean, so it's not meaningful enough. So we thought that there was a question of imagining creating something simple, robust, that would be a dashboard that would give the possibility for investors, decision makers to better see how things are working at their level. It's difficult sometimes to understand when we talk about barometer is the amount of data available. I mean, today when we look at a small size company director, they've inundated with data flows, loads and loads, too much data. What is going to make the difference with your barometer? I mean, how are we going to make this accessible to people who make the decisions? That's the purpose of our work. I mean, we try and find a solution because tools, there are lots of them. I mean, each organization, each department, each collective organization, and there are huge quantities between ADEME, France Travail, the different ministries. There are millions of data, but when we've got a dashboard with million data, we don't have a dashboard. So our mission is to say, okay, what is relevant to highlight, to have an initial idea. We can always go deeper afterwards, but I mean, to the one who's got to understand what's happening in his region or near him, I mean, what is key for him to understand, where he's got to take action, where he's got to interact. So we had to look at the territory as a whole, at the right scale, not too high, but going closer up towards the metropolis level or the municipalities being joined. I mean, to see how the territory changes, suddenly or not, in a natural way. What is done by the public stakeholders to change this territory, and then what the other economic and social stakeholders do on their side. So while looking for the cooperation dynamics, showing that it follows a trend, I mean, that's what we try to create. It's quite ambitious, but I mean, if it is successful, I mean, it's something new. A dynamic tool which changes through time, clear updates with a time dimension. I mean, it's not an instant snapshot. I mean, I hear also the scale, quite a small scale. Yeah, dynamics is important because a snapshot doesn't mean anything. I mean, there's going to be such indicator of precarity, of senior employment, rate of CO2, and so on. I mean, a snapshot, that's the way it is, but we want to highlight the trend over a few years, and we've got to go to a scale of where the real life is. I mean, we could always go up afterwards on larger perimeters, a department or a region, but it's at the local level that the decisions are made, and that's where actions can be taken. And you can compare things. If you're comparing a territory with another to understand why we've done better, where somewhere else it's been done differently, it gives you thinking matters. But there's a question that we've got to solve in this equation: the availability of data, because what we thought is that if we asked for data from any organization, or if we had to create the indicators, etc., it would be too difficult. We've got to have access to open source data, and that's a challenge, especially when you go lower to the ideal territory. So project which is cooperation, yes, it's truly a cooperation project. We're going to federate a lot of stakeholders, and the idea behind all that is to show how all this changes, how the transformation dynamics is done with one and the other. So to see whether things match between the economics of the economic and social stakeholders and the local area. What happened at the World Forum? I mean, you met with the audience. I mean, we've started to work for more than 6 months, 9 months now in Sinopia. We've got a working group with friends, experts. We've got 2 partners. We worked with you, with Thierry Fouquet. So we've been able to get the big lines of the topic, and we've exchanged with the Alliance Network also. We had meetings, and the right sequence would be to take the advantage of the World Forum to challenge our ideas by gathering the number of people who wanted to. I mean, we've got about 50 people who spent 2 hours in a workshop yesterday. They devoted quite a lot of their time, and we thank them for that. I mean, to challenge this idea of the barometer, this is what we want to do, but what do they offer? How do they understand it? So that's the first information that we're going to compile. And the second thing that we did was that the Alliance Network, thank you for that, gave us a booth that you saw it in this area here, and with Jana for 2 days we collected some testimonies, we auditioned some people, and we gathered about 20 testimonies, spending half an hour. They answered our questions. This is a barometer, this is the idea, what is relevant, I mean, would you suggest? And we got feedback which is quite interesting, good ideas. You should have a GDP at territorial level, the type of places which are dedicated to living together, linking that to the quality of life between people, which can link you more closely to a territory. We've got very concrete data, and we're very positive. We want to have the global synthesis, and we want to compile all this to meet with the Alliance Network in the coming weeks to have to get into a phase of things being more concrete, and to challenge that with decision makers, private, public, and we will carry on with the interviews. We're going to meet the national agents of the territorial cohesion. They're doing a great job, and that's interesting to tell them what we're doing. I mean, they're probably going to tell us that that's already been done. I'm not sure it has, actually. I don't think so, but we're going to produce the first matrix for the first quarter of next year and get that to work, and probably before the next World Forum to show you that it works. Marilyn, when we talk about cooperation, economy, and decision-making at the level of the territory, it's normal for the Alliance Network to be part of it, and Alexandre summed it up. I mean, we used to do things, each of us in our little corner. I'm going to take you that in a fun way, but I mean, when Jean-Pierre meets somebody, I mean, there's got to be a communication. I mean, the conference speakers told us there's a new line of communication, which is about cooperation, working together and trying to bring to the territory to throw some light on that. I mean, global data doesn't bring so much to the territories, but I mean, it throws a clear light for the decision makers. I mean, we'd been waiting for this document for a long time. It's an adventure which moves fast. I mean, Sinopia, I mean, they've got a lot of brain power. They don't have just computers. I mean, the challenge will be to create something which is simple, which will be relevant, which will be meaningful, and which is quite rustic. I mean, it should be meaningful for everybody, not look for things which are too complicated, and have avant-garde indicators. I mean, this is a trend, but it's small, but I mean, it's meaningful. So it's a very good project, and I think that we've got something new and relevant. I mean, we are looking forward to having the first version. Sandrine, the regenerated approach carried by the Alliance Network, you're Vice President of the Alliance Network. Just a brief reminder of what's happened in the past. July 24, here in this space, we met 40 organizations of the farming and agri-food business to talk about decarbonization, with the purpose for this Hauts-de-France region be the first one in this trend to be decarbonated. That's what we wanted to do. That's what we launched here in this particular space. And then we thought it's quite specific to talk about agriculture and agri-food business from Entreprises et Cités. So we thought we've got to go on the territories and meet these stakeholders. Between September and November, 5 meetings, one in Lan for red fruit, and I thank them. Saint-Paul-sur-Ternoise at Ingredia, Aboz at Noria, Lille Crédit Agricole, and Beauvais Unilassal. We met very different stakeholders. We met companies, there was EDF, GRDF, General Mills, Danone McCain. We met cooperatives also, Tereos. We met NGOs and associations who took part, institutions. REF3 was also represented, the agricultural chambers, some students from the University of Lille, bank people, and there's a movement that is actually launched. The central point, the pivotal point, is decarbonization. Sandrine, before being in the regenerated approach, I would like you to put some words on this notion of decarbonization. I mean, for everybody to understand where we're at now. Decarbonization is a policy of reduction of greenhouse gas effect in the economy. Today, we're Offbeat, which is a great name. I mean, personally, I focus on what I've done with my life. I worked for about 10 days in the pharmaceutical industry, in the pharmacy, looking after the health of people. I worked in the agri-food business, where we took care of the food of people, and I'm looping the loop, trying to look after the planet, and we realized that in the One Health principle, everything is linked, the health of people, animals, and the planet, it's all interlinked. So I'm looping the loop now personally, and listening at the testimony of the previous roundtable with a person coming from Argentina. It was really inspiring to see that doing things at the scale of the territory. I mean, I'm not talking about overseas and dom-tom, because when you're in Lille, when we talk about territories, we've got the impression that we're looking from very far away what is happening in the Nord-Pas-de-Calais, and I felt totally in sync with the testimony of this person coming from Argentina, with the power of the territory, and the scale of decision must be at the level of the territory. So when we commit and we start a policy of reduction of greenhouse gas effect to look after the planet, it's important for it to be done at the territorial level, because that's where we're going to be efficient. So to answer totally your question, the principle of decarbonization is to reduce greenhouse gas effects at the level of the economy. Regenerate, and I mentioned that during the introduction, is something that wants to be close to the territory and that will take the whole of the value chain of the agriculture industry, upstream, downstream. It's a singular approach, would you say? Well, this is a temple of CSR, the Alliance Network. So I was taken on board with the company I managed with CSR. We did it disorderly, with lots of action. We had hybrid cars and we put beehives on the roof, but coming to a certain level of maturity, and that was during the COVID that it happened. We were looking for masks and we tried to understand things and to structure things as a research project, and there we thought that for it to be efficient, we had to get a label. ISO 26030, that's the international reference of a structured approach in the CSR, and we tried to get the B Corp label. I saw that there were B Corp people. It took us 3 years of work. It's extremely complicated. And this approach gives us a certain level of maturity as far as CSR is concerned, because it's all very clearly framed. But now, to be efficient, it's not just a matter of walking along your swimming pool corridor. I mean, you've got to do it with other stakeholders for it to be impactful. 400 million turnover and a lot of people. We can't be impactful with only 500 people. We've got a lot of commitment, and we want to do things that will be useful for the health of people, for the health of animals, and for the health of the planet. If we want to be efficient, we've got to do that collectively. So the business I work a lot in was the agri-food business with farmers. And in our region, the farmers are breeders, and they deal with polyculture, multiple crop. We worked with General Mix, an American group who wanted to put in place regenerative farming. So we started to work with 5-10 farmers. It was complicated to convince them, but a year later, McCain, based also in a region with 3 plants, important ones in this region, they started also to get into this regenerating agriculture. So we understood that the farmer is at the heart of a system with several productions, breeding, and crops, and we were efficient if we managed to gather together the sum total of the crops, the production, potatoes for McCain, cereals for Unial, beetroot for Terios, etc., etc. And the collective element came from the luck I had to meet Marie-Hélène, who invited me for the Alliance Network. I didn't have much time, but I thought that if it was to get on the way a collective project around feeding and food and decarbonization, it would make sense to have a big focus on food and the regenerated approach that was mentioned by the previous speakers. For Argentina, this approach is a collective approach. It's collective because it's the only way for it to be efficient and compelling. And yesterday we had a workshop where more than 100 people attended. So with a collective intelligence, which was boosted as in the 5 places that you mentioned, and it does you a lot of good. You feel good to think that with the challenge of decarbonization, which is a challenge where nobody knows which way to go, but the solution will be in the collective action. We shouldn't wait for technological solutions. We've got to get into motion and to want to change things, and for that solutions are in collective intelligence and in the fact of thinking together. So I'm hyper proud of the approach that the Alliance Network has launched, and to associate the agricultural chambers, the draft, the ADEME, and other agri-food companies, the cooperatives representing the farmers. For it to be impactful, it's got to be collective. What we noticed in the workshops in the territories or here, despite the industrial context, the economic context, the dense agricultural world, I mean, decarbonation has been a federative tool. I mean, there was an increase in the awareness. I won't be able to make it together. As the theme mentions it, do we have time to deal with this topic? I mean, given all the social fractures, geopolitical fractures, have we got the time? We will never have the time, but there's one time where you've got to take the time to say that this is the most important thing that you have to do, and to do that collectively. And we talk a lot about regenerating agriculture, but it's regenerating to work together and to find solutions together for the land, for the soil, but for men and women. Now, what are we going to do? We've completed the cycle. There's been a lot of proposal and so on. What is the next step? I mean, it snowballed. I mean, we started to gather and take on board more and more people. So it's a snowballing effect. Now, what you have got to know is to get on board more and more people. We can see that in our meetings, in our collective intelligence workshop, we've got to include the newcomers to put them at the right level. So I think that in the coming steps, we're going to have to define the governance of this project. In the North region, it's going to be Rev 3, I Have a Dream, by associating the agricultural world, the banks. In the meetings that we did in the region, in the company where I work, there are several bank stakeholders, and it's important to see that they were collaborating and not competing against, and training institutes, because there are a lot of things that we don't understand. We need to have some lights thrown on it, all the schools, because that's why the fifth meeting was held in Place Beauvais. Research, because there are lots of things that we don't know yet that should be made available. Companies and logistics. I mean, there's a lot of things about the logistics. I mean, we did more than 50% transport using biofuel, so there are important things. It changes quite quickly. Yes, we can see biofuel, biogas regularly on lorries and so on. So we've got to keep rolling, and then institutions, representatives who were with us right from the beginning with the Alliance Network and the political world, because there are things that help us to, like the CSRD, the extra financial performance element, but it shouldn't be compulsory, it shouldn't be just regulatory. We've got to keep a focus on the goal. We've got to define the governance. The second step will be to define clearly the 5-year dashboard. There got to be milestone indicators to show through the new governance that Alexandre offers. I mean, do we decarbonize? Do we follow the COP21 decarbonization element? We've got to be able to show that we're moving forward, that there might be hurdles still. We're going to need to continue moderating the circle of the decision makers circle. They were highly motivated. I mean, we had a lot of people, and we've got to continue to keep the flame burning. We've got to continue to take on board all the territories and all the farmers for it to be done in a frame mind of pride collectively. And then we've got to launch all the workshops, run data, ran the IT system part. I mean, there were some actions that were listed. Communication also. There's a Terre Fête, which is the biggest fair in the north of France. We could imagine to have the Lotus also, as we call them, in the different workshops. That's going to be part of that. Define the governance, define the roadmap, moderate the decision maker circle, and take on board with pride the farmers and the workshop cycle also. That's dense and very rich in meaning. Marie-Hélène, could you please react quickly about this regeneration cycle? You were with it, at the core of it all. A word quickly to add on to what has been just said. It was a big gamble, but it was. We were in the demonstration, and Adam told me, "You're not going to dare." Yes, I did dare, and it worked. I mean, referring to Jean-Louis Bornu, the neutrality of resilience has become the leader. We're going to bring you methodology. We're going to bring the networks, and the purpose is not to struggle and not to get angry. People need collective elements. It has worked. The only reaction I would have, we've got several collective, like Grow on the Handicap, which is making step forward. The young people collective organization, that's very important. What is very interesting is that in the last 2 days, everybody asked me to join the group. And the last comment I would like to make is that the ADEME, who was a co-financer of this approach, they know what's happened yesterday, and we can criticize the administration. Quick, the copy for the second phase, because we got the funds, and this is remarkable. Round of applause for ADEME. I know that some representative of ADEME are there. Quickly give us the second copy. They want to go forward. I mean, the funds are available. It's not just because it's decarbonization. I mean, the Alliance Network, we get collective, and when it's difficult, we keep on speaking to each other. There were farmers on the territory, NGOs also, and the walls were knocked down, and people started to communicate with each other. Marie-Hélène, we're getting to the end of this World Forum. Of course, you're going to have the final word. I mean, I would like to know what you bear in mind, what you keep in mind, what moved you, what you did like, the struggle or the issues that you want to tackle. I would like to tell you that here that the founders of the Alliance Network are here. Jean-Bernard, I would like to greet them. I hope, and Bruno, thank you. I hope that you're happy with what we are doing. You know me. I mean, I've been a company manager. I will hide my emotions, but sometimes the emotions overflow. And I handed over to Adrian, 38 years old, and you've seen what happens. He's in a radio station to talk about the World Forum right now, so he's not with us. But I would like to know that this Adrian, right from the 1st of September, I'm very, very proud of having handed over the position to him. Congratulations to him, and I wanted to insist on that because Alliance Network for the last 30 years has supported the CSR, and we've had a lot of media support. And yesterday, the BFM journalist said, Madame Fouberer, it's regulatory, those indicators and all that. But when you talk to us, I mean, we've got the impression that you're in the third phase of tomorrow's world. This was such a compliment for this association where things are not always easy. And the second thing was that I wanted to welcome our 3 vice presidents because they didn't come for no reason. Thank you very much, Sandrine. Thank you, Philippe Rémillon and Jean-Marie Lamblin. They carry things on their shoulders and have been doing so for the last 3 days. And for the team at the back, it's very important. The emotion of this World Forum, I believed in it, but it's impressive. Let me give you the figures. 3,000 people for 2 days, final figures, not counting the people who were passing by, more than 600 during the plenary session, tweets everywhere, and we got incredible feedback of the president of Adam Le Crémont saying it was very high level, very high flying, and the speakers, thank you, thank you, thank you, top quality. Pedro, I will come to Patagonia and visit you tomorrow. And I will add on to what the CSR trophies. Everybody said that yesterday it was thriving to see 10 different companies and associations, and it works. It's changing. And the last emotion was all the feedback I had. You read the papers. I was asked, it's not all that great. Everybody was telling me, but how nice it is to meet together, to exchange, to communicate, to talk about this. This offbeat was really great, and I will refer to this 4-star general and a company like this at General. We close our eyes when we listen to you, and we forget that you're a general, and he took that as a compliment. So this is a note that we really dead exhausted, but it was the right moment. I mean, my sister was there. He created this forum. It was the right time, and we can prove again, thanks to that being collective is important, and cooperation is a word that props up everywhere, and we could do that between Lille and the southern country, because Sanspio told our speakers that we've got to do something. We're going to go to Patagonia, and I would like to thank all our partners. I'm not going to name them because, I mean, I might miss out a few and I don't want to hurt anybody. Thank you to Sinopia, who's with us, because, I mean, that's easy. He's next to me. Thank you to all our partners, EDF and so on. And, of course, I would like to call the team, because I can tell you that they haven't been able to sleep a wink. I mean, can you, Réseau Alliance Network, can come and join me? They were hidden. They were hiding. The team, they're coming from the back, from everywhere. I mean, they were hiding. Right. They know it. They know me. Look at the average age of them all. Fortunately, I'm here. I'm putting the balance at the right level now. Look at them. And Sandrine,
regarde comme les femmes vont changer le
look
monde.
how women will change the world.
Adrien va revenir.
Adrien will be back.
Voilà.
Okay.
Et c'est une équipe qui...
This is a team.
Alors, vous souvenez. Dunia, alors,
Donia.
voilà. Quand on me dit les jeunes n'ont pas envie de travailler,
When people tell me that young people don't want to work, there is commitment, first of all, in situations which are not very easy, and even if sometimes they're difficult to manage, I'm delighted to,
vraiment, on les remercie.
they're great.
Cette année encore plus que
They've done more than before, and I hope that they're going to be able to sleep now.
elle recevait des PowerPoint à 2 heures du matin.
She received PowerPoints at 2 a.m.
Bravo et un grand bravo à vous. Ça donne confiance dans l'avenir.
Congratulations, and it gives us full confidence for the future. I'll go at the back then for the picture,
Allez
yeah?
avec les grands.
I'll go for the taller ones.
Allez, on y va.
Okay, let's go. Get rid of the badges, please.
Bruno,
Bruno.
sur la photo. s'il vous plaît.
Bruno, please come
Allez, Bruno,
on to
avec
this
nous.
picture with us, please. Bruno.
Bernard,
Jean-Bernard, too.
photo et après Bruno. Allez, voilà les fondateurs.
Okay, the
Bravo.
founding members. Congratulations.
Ah non, elle va lever. Viens Bruno. Ah non, Bruno, non.
No, Bruno won't sit in an armchair. Is Jean-Bernard here? We've got another founding member.
Il veut pas.
He doesn't want to come and join us.
Allez, photo.
No, he's left, actually. Picture. One, two, three, picture.